Welcome, Pewter Report readers, viewers, and listeners, to a brand new edition of the Pewter Report podcast, energized by Celsius, the official energy drink of pewterreport.com. It is a Monday edition of the show. Hope everybody had a great weekend. Happy Father's Day to all the dads out there watching and listening to this show right now. Hope you had a fantastic day. And shout out to everybody that watched House of the Dragon as well. That was great Sunday night viewing. But happy to get back into it this week as we talk about your favorite NFL team, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We're also going to put a little bow on minicamp that happened last week. Today, we will talk about the winners and losers that came out of minicamp as the Bucs get set for a little bit of a break before training camp arrives in the middle of later July. I'm your host, Matt Matera. Joined with me is my fellow colleague from PewterReport.com. He was out with me and us, I should say, all of Pewter Report, at minicamp last week. He's on the show all the time. And joining me today is Adam Slavon. Adam, how we doing?
Matt, we're doing great. And just want to say we're matching today with the Celsius hats.
We're going a little yin and the yang. I got the white Celsius logo. You have the black Celsius logo. Great minds think alike, and I must say you're looking quite dapper in the Celsius hat.
Why, thank you. You are too, Matt. And great to be on with you. Although the Bucs are on summer break, we're not on summer break, and this is arguably one of the most fun times of the year because even though there's still a lull in between now and training camp, it really allows us to dive deeper into some other topics and leading in the weeks ahead. But today the focus is on minicamp and who the winners and losers are. So really excited for the back and forth discussion that we're going to have.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you brought it up because some may be new to the Pewter Report podcast. We do this podcast all year long, 4 times a week. Doesn't matter whether the Bucs are playing or they're not playing. We are here to talk about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And yeah, because we are in the summer, I know it might not be the official first day of summer, but if they're Memorial Day, it's the summer. I don't really care what anyone says. It's the start of the summer. Yeah. So that's a good point, too, especially in this great place called Florida. With all of that said, we're going to come up with like different things, during the offseason. It's not just going to be like, yes, we will dive into the roster and everything like that, but like, I'm down for some fun hypotheticals, different, like, what if this versus that, things of that nature. We're not going to make a first take. We're not going to be Stephen A. Smith screaming at each other. But I think it does open the door and the opportunity for some more, outside the box ideas and topics and all these different things that can come from this time of the season. And then, of course, like the NFL will have its top 100 rankings. We'll freak out about Mike Evans not being properly ranked or, whatever the case may be. So that's just a little heads up for everybody. We ain't going nowhere. I guess we shouldn't quote that song because it's Diddy. But we are here to stay. I'm sure that's the name of a song somewhere.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's keep it rocking and rolling. Let's put a bow on minicamp like we were talking about. Adam, if you had to choose someone that you would say had the best week of minicamp, whether it was from practice, whether it was from just dominating a press conference, whether it's what other teammates about, who, in your mind, was the number one winner of Buccaneers minicamp?
Yeah, that's a great question. If I had to pick just one player from minicamp, I would have to go with Jaylen McMillan. I felt that last week, every single practice, he was making impressive catches. I think the second day of minicamp was his best. He had like 3-4 nice catches, really developed a nice rapport with Baker Mayfield. And I feel like he's really staked a claim, and he has that insider track to be wide receiver number 3 going into this season. And I really liked what Baker said about him when Baker spoke this past week.
Yeah.
And he said that McMillan's explosive and he's a smooth route runner. And I feel like you really just saw that on display throughout every practice. He was getting open, beating some guys like Bryce Hall and like starting caliber cornerbacks. I felt that he just really shined, and he deserves a lot of buzz. I mean, granted, it isn't training camp yet. There isn't pads on. And I know that you've mentioned and kind of reiterated a couple of times that you've kind of fallen for it before, But with Jaylen
Yes.
McMillan, really like what you've seen so far from him.
Yeah, and I think the difference for McMillan, and I think that is the number one choice overall, probably should be McMillan. The reason why it's different than some of the other guys is because McMillan is the highest drafted wide receiver that the Bucs have taken since Chris Godwin, who was also in the third round. So we're already talking about the talent level being higher than the Jalen Dardens of the past, or even Trey Palmer, who they drafted last season in a way later round, I believe the 6th round. So the potential and the talent was already there beforehand. And there's also those discussions that he probably should have been drafted even, earlier than when he did, but injuries obviously played a factor. The injuries don't concern me because I think we have to remember, listen, there are people that have injury histories. Jamel Dean had an injury history going back to even Ohio State before he transferred to Auburn. Like, Ohio State said that he wasn't going to be able to play football again because of his knee injury. So he had a history of injury that I think probably was a red flag to some teams. Even more familiar for Bucs fans was Antoine Winfield Jr., who slipped to the second round to the benefit of the Buccaneers. But he was a guy that got hurt at Minnesota and didn't play a ton just based off of injury. Now, thankfully, yes, he's missed some games in his career, but it has not been a lengthy thing, knock on wood. I'm knocking everywhere I possibly can.
Best piece of wood around.
For Antoine Winfield Jr. to be healthy. But you could see why he would kind of get pushed back because of that history. And unfortunately, I think it happened to McMillan. But I think on the field production-wise, what I've liked from him so much is it wasn't like he was just hitting it off with Baker. That third practice, which you and I were at, yes, Rakim Jarrett made some nice plays. And yes, Sterling Shepard kind of got on board. But McMillan was the first guy that caught a pass from Kyle Trask. It was McMillan that stood out in the rookie minicamp. And yes, he's going up against rookies, but working with the rookie quarterback, had the highlight play then, made some plays with Baker Mayfield. And then, of course, when Baker had the day off, essentially, he picked it up right where he left off with Kyle Trask. That's the signs of a really good receiver. I mean, Mike Evans is the poster boy. I would say him and DeAndre Hopkins of, in their careers working with subpar quarterbacks. I mean, Bucs fans know all too well with Mike Evans working with, Mike Lennon and McCown and Ryan Fitzpatrick. And then, of course, Jameis Winston. Tom Brady wasn't until well into Mike Evans' career, and same with Baker Mayfield. So I think adding a bunch of different looks for Jaylen McMillan is a good thing for him, and of course it's good for the quarterback that this wide receiver is quarterback proof because it's Mike Evans and Hopkins. I think really have shown, Devontae Adams to a degree. It's very difficult to be a quarterback-proof wide receiver, but it can be done, obviously, and we've seen it firsthand with Mike Evans, and hopefully Jaylen McMillan can kind of get that trait.
Yeah, that's a great point. And just one other thing about McMillan, like the local media, we've kind of watched him throughout minicamp last week. I thought it was really interesting when CBS Sports' Pete Prisco, he came down to minicamp for a day.
Yes, you wrote a story on this.
Yeah, and one of the guys that really stood out the most to him, he made a couple posts on X about it, was Jaylen McMillan, and the fact that he thinks that he's going to have a big role in his rookie year, and not just that, but at Washington in 2022, McMillan had the best statistics of the big three wide receivers there with Rome Odunze and Jalen Polk. And last year, if it wasn't for injury, he very well could have catapulted into the second round. He probably would have likely been kind of where Polk was selected at the beginning of the second round. But just the talent is there with Jaylen McMillan. And it does really seem like the Bucs have a steal in this guy. And he can kind of be groomed along slowly in his rookie year, kind of like Chris Godwin was when he got drafted. You're not expecting him to be a 1,000-yard wide receiver his rookie year. But if he can learn from Mike and Chris, maybe get like 700, 800 yards. And then depending on Chris Godwin and his contract year, if he leaves, you could kind of build some optimism if McMillan's the number 2 wide receiver heading into 2025.
Yeah, it's a really good spot to be in, right? Because you're coming to a good team. They're adjusting their offense, not specifically for Jaylen McMillan, but they're adjusting their offense where they are going to rely on the third wide receiver more, and yet there's not going to be the pressure to put up all this crazy production because of the man on the screen that you see, Mike Evans, and because of Chris Godwin. So really anything that Jaylen McMillan does that is, Pro Bowl worthy or anything like that, that's just a bonus for Tampa Bay because it's still going to run through Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. If he got 1,000 yards, I think everyone would be ecstatic. Mike Evans, maybe not so much because Mike has the record for most consecutive seasons with 1,000 yards. I kid. Mike Evans would be super pumped for Jaylen McMillan as well. But it's a great situation, in my opinion, to join this team, not asked to be the guy right away. Kind of, in a sense, like Odunze going to the Bears, he does luck out that, they did get Keenan Allen. They added a couple of guys, or else he'd be asked to produce right away with Caleb Williams, and I'm sure he will too. And to the point you just made before about Prisco talking about that McMillan, had the better numbers and everything. Sometimes timing is most important. We've talked about it, probably you and I as well. We've talked about it on this show before. And I think people, even though it's not Bucs specific, it is, I think, an important aspect. I think one player in particular in the history of football that has really benefited from like playing well and having a great season at the right time is Joe Burrow, who now, of course, is on the Cincinnati Bengals. Yeah. Because Joe Burrow could have left, after LSU. I believe they beat UCF in Bailey Adams would know, but they beat UCF in some bowl game. And Burrow could have left, but at the time, it wouldn't have made sense for him to leave because no one was looking at Joe Burrow as like a top prospect. And then he comes back. LSU's insane. They have one of the best seasons of all time. And became a first-round pick. And it's like in 12 months, Joe Burrow went from like on nobody's radar to the best quarterback in college football and a Heisman Trophy winner and the number one pick.
Yeah.
It kind of had the ulterior effect for someone like McMillan, who, I don't even know, he wasn't eligible, but in 2022, if he would have left for the NFL, he probably ends up being a second-round pick or something. But again, it's also the Bucs' benefit, and I don't think it'll necessarily hurt his long-term career. I mean, obviously Mike's going to be around for a bit, but as we've seen with Mike Evans, like there's room in this offense for other people to also, produce and be a good player. And I think Jaylen McMillan can do that, and he's off to a good start. Let's get to the super chat from Brandon Riley. Thank you, Brandon, for the $5 super chat. And of course, you super chat us. We're happy to talk about whatever. You get to cut the line. You control the conversation. So anyway, Brandon says, have you guys got a schedule of the games Pewter Report will be attending? I live in Kentucky and would love to meet you guys. Thank you so much, Brandon. We love our fans. Definitely happy to say hello and meet up as well. For every home game, we're at every single Buccaneers home game. So if you plan on going to a Bucs game, yes, you will see us. We attend every single home game. Scott's usually at every single one. Then we kind of rotate who goes from Pewter Report. We'll have plans about that, before the season starts, but those haven't been ironed out just yet. Road games, that of course
Josh should be at the Atlanta one.
Josh will be in Atlanta. I will be at the Giants one, and we're still figuring out the rest of the road schedule. But yeah, we'll let you know. Or if you have a game in particular that you're going to, please let us know. We're happy to say hello because, like I said, we love the Pewter people. And speaking of the Pewter people, we will be doing this in a couple of minutes. We are going to be doing some roll call, which we do on every single Monday show. It's one of the funnest things that we do, and we'll get that popping off momentarily. Damn, I'm having a tough talking day. That's all right, though. It's the first day of the week. Okay, I want to bring up somebody for different reasons, still in the winner category, but probably different for why he's a winner, and that's going to be Vita Vea. I think he was one of the biggest storylines, no pun intended, when he was available because he was not at OTAs. Again, that's optional. Was not at OTAs, but was at mandatory minicamp. And Vita Vea has slimmed down. And I think why that's so important, Adam, is not that he was unserious, but it shows his commitment to wanting to continue to be a great player who is producing and performing at a high level. Definitely. And Vita's kind of he's not old by any means. He's still very much in his prime, but it's about sustaining that longevity and that prime for a little bit longer. And by getting in shape earlier than he typically does, I think that's obviously important for the Bucs, and it also sends a message to everybody else on the team too.
Yeah, I agree. And no one better to be training with in the offseason than Ndamukong Suh, who was really an Iron Man throughout his career with the Lions, later the Dolphins, the Bucs, and the Eagles. I mean, that guy did not miss a game. I think he missed 2 early in his career because of a suspension, but otherwise, he played all 16 games. He was dominant, played a lot of the snaps, and that's what Vita Vea and the Bucs are really hoping for. Regardless of what he weighs, he didn't give an exact number, but seeing him on the field more and kind of like putting less pressure on his joints when you're such a big guy.
Yeah,
like foot and ankle injuries are bound to happen. You've kind of seen it with Vea in recent seasons. If he wants to extend his career and keep playing until his early 30s and still being a Pro Bowl level nose tackle, he kind of need to shed some weight a little bit. And it looks like he has. He looks great, more agile, and definitely looks primed for a bigger year. Playing alongside Kalijah Kancey, too, who's on the screen. They really could wreak havoc along the Bucs defensive line.
Right. So this is a picture, I'm pretty sure, obviously, because they weren't really wearing any helmets during the portion open to practice at the beginning. So this is a picture from last year when Kalijah Kancey was a rookie. And that's Vita Vea, how he looks last season. And then, of course, we just had that other picture up, if I can find it. But the other picture of Vita Vea looks quite different. Yeah, there we go. Like
belly.
Yeah, it's gone. Right. It's like someone put it up on their laptop, took like the eraser button and just hovered it over his stomach. And yeah, but good for Vita Vea. Obviously, it's important that he produces for this team. And he, again, off to a good start. Like Jaylen McMillan, just showing that he's committed and dedicated right away, I think was very important. As Bat W says, wow, no guts. And Gaming Reaper says, Vea is going to be a problem this year. Yeah, problem for other teams, but nothing that the Bucs will have to worry about, thankfully. And you don't have to worry anymore, ladies and gentlemen, because it is time for that thing that we do every single Monday on the Pewter Report podcast. It is time for some roll call. Where you at, Peter people? So we do this every single Monday, right around 4:20. Sometimes we're fashionably late.
Yeah.
We love interacting with the Pewter people as much as we possibly can. And this is one way that we do it with roll call, where one of us will talk about a topic about your favorite team, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And while we're doing that, the other person is putting up on the screen where you are watching the show from. If you want to put in your location, as we started it off there with Black Crow Volume 2 with Iowa. But Adam, I'm going to talk about one of the losers on this year's Bucs minicamp. If you want to start putting up the locations for everybody, I'm going to talk about a guy who's on. I don't think he's a loser as a person. I don't think he's a bad person, but he's taking an L this week or last week for mandatory minicamp, really because he didn't show up. And that, of course, is Randy Gregory. He's in a 49ers jersey there, but he is a Tampa Bay Buccaneer currently. I don't know exactly for how long. So obviously the big story with Randy Gregory, he was not at mandatory minicamp. He's going to get fined over $100,000. Todd Bowles has been relatively quiet about Randy Gregory. He just said, I can only coach the guys that are here. I've had conversations with Randy Gregory. he didn't flat out say, I'm angry that Randy Gregory is not here, but by the way that Bowles was responding, his quick response as well to, what's next with Randy Gregory, it doesn't sound like he's too happy about what's going on. We asked Levante David, who knows Randy Gregory a little bit because they're both from the Miami area. He just said that he's praying for him, wouldn't really specify about anything else. Levante didn't sound like he really knew what was going on either. I know he's got this lawsuit going on with the NFL over the amount of times he's been fined for THC. I am not privy to the knowledge of what's going on for him from a mental aspect at the moment, because obviously he suffers from some mental health issues, and I want to be acknowledgement of that, and obviously I take it seriously. So with all that stuff said, it's just a bad look not coming to mandatory minicamp when you are on a team that kind of doesn't really need you based on all the other moves that they made. At the time, it made sense to sign Randy Gregory because at that time, you didn't draft Chris Braswell yet. However, OTAs, while yes, it's optional, it's pretty much only optional to some star players. Mike Evans, it's optional. He doesn't have to be there. Vita Vea didn't have to be there. Levante David didn't have to be there. When you're an outside linebacker with a checkered history trying to stay in the NFL and play in a position where the Bucs have filled it to the brim, essentially, over the last couple of seasons, you have to be there. So that's already not a good first look with Randy Gregory not showing up to OTAs. Then he's not at mandatory minicamp for whatever reason. I don't want to sound mean, and I'm not saying the Bucs should cut Randy Gregory, but if they wanted to, I don't think they would be losing anything at all. And that's more to the rest of the depth at outside linebacker than specifically what Randy Gregory has been doing. I get people are unhappy with Joe Tryon-Shoyinka and how he has put up his production as a first-round pick. I get that Anthony Nelson is probably better suited as a backup outside linebacker and shouldn't really be starting. But between JTS, Anthony Nelson, Yaya Diaby, who's going to be starting on one of the other sides, so I'm kind of just talking about the other starting outside linebacker position. Then you got Marquise Watts, who made a name for himself last season. Jose Ramirez is one of those guys that went through a body transformation that we've seen at OTAs and minicamp. Oh, and by the way, Chris Braswell has looked pretty damn good, even though he doesn't have shoulder pads on. The Bucs have plenty of other options at outside linebacker than Randy Gregory. He was a nice insurance policy, but at this point, he's not even there, and he's causing more headaches than the Bucs necessarily have to deal with compared to another position where they may need it. If Bryce Hall didn't show up to OTAs, you'd be kind of mad about it, but you need Bryce Hall as your backup cornerback more than the Bucs need Randy Gregory as their backup outside linebacker. So with all that said, I hope Randy Gregory figures it out and, shows up at training camp if he's still on the team and has a role for the Buccaneers. But Adam, if he doesn't, then so be it. The Bucs will be fine without him. For his own sake, I hope it works out, and I hope he can contribute and help out Tampa Bay. But in my opinion, I think the Bucs are fine with or without Randy Gregory.
I really think you hit the nail on the head there, Matt. You explained it so thoroughly. But when you look at it with Randy Gregory, he really was like kind of the insurance policy heading into the offseason. Like if one of the younger guys wasn't ready to step up, the hope was that Randy Gregory could at least kind of be a factor. But like throughout minicamp, when you look at like some of the winners, pretty much it's every outside linebacker not named Randy Gregory. Right?
Yeah.
When you look at all these guys getting extra reps, that meant Chris Braswell, he was out there, kind of shined, had a few pressures, and would be sacks. Jose Ramirez really looks like he's taken the next step forward. Marquise Watts, I mean, hey, he could be the number 2 pass rusher alongside Yaya Diaby, kind of a sleeper heading into training camp. You have all those guys. You have Joe Tryon-Shoyinka and Anthony Nelson. Kind of know what to expect out of them. It's like Randy Gregory, he was already kind of fighting for snaps, and now he's really on the outside looking in. I mean, if he doesn't come into training camp and light things up and prove that and kind of getting out of the doghouse that he was in, because Todd Bowles, he, like you said, he didn't really sound too happy about Randy Gregory missing that time and just saying that we're coaching the guys that are here, not Randy Gregory. So looking at it, I mean, I feel like it's really time for the young outside linebackers to really get their shot, and could mean that Randy Gregory never plays a snap for the Bucs.
Which would be crazy. Like, we don't have any pictures or anything of Randy Gregory in a Bucs helmet, in a practice jersey. The only thing we have is the Zoom press conference where I believe he was wearing a creamsicle hat that day. So he does have good taste, but I think you said it very well. Shout out to David Melnick, who says, if Gregory has a great camp this summer, I think his actions will be forgotten. Yeah, I mean, the best way to be, proven on the field, but you have to arrive. You have to be there to, show what you can do. Because I still think he might have a little bit of, juice left into the tank or something like that. Maybe some extra energy, but he's got to be there to really prove it. And speaking of energy, of course, the Pewter Report podcast is energized by Celsius, the official energy drink of pewterreport.com and this lovely podcast. We always keep the vibes high on this show, and we want you guys to go out there and have a go at it with the either Cosmic, Galaxy, or Astro vibe. I love the Arctic vibe as well. Big fan of the tropical vibe. So great flavors of Celsius. The fancy vibe as well. I would strongly recommend. There's no sugar. It's a great substitute for coffee if you want to start your morning the right way with Celsius energy drinks. It's awesome for a workout as well. Tons and tons of benefits from having a Celsius energy drink. If you know where to go get a Celsius, head on over to the Celsius store website, punch in your address, and it'll tell you the closest location where you can pick one up. Could be a Walmart, health and fitness store, or potentially your bodega.
Bodega.
Oh. That was good. That was kind of like the Hot 97, like when you got the horn going. That was great. That was a nice little, not adjustment, but you know what I mean.
A little spin on it.
Yeah, spin for sure. Like almost, bringing in someone else. Damn, that threw me off for a second. That was so good. And then once you can go to your bodega and you love Celsius, you can get them in bulk over on Amazon, where, let's all face it, we go on Amazon a ton. Go to Amazon, click on the subscribe and save, and I'd recommend getting that variety pack of Celsius, because why limit yourself to one flavor of Celsius when you can have tons of flavor? But get that variety pack. Variety's the spice of life. Have it sent to your place of residence whenever you want. Could be a week, month, quarterly, yearly. Just make sure you're drinking energy drinks. You're the captain now, so have it sent to your place of residence. And enjoy a Celsius, the official energy drink of pewterreport.com. Adam, looked like we had a great turnout once again from a roll call. So why don't you tell us about a couple of people that we are going to give a shout out to?
Yeah, so the first one I have here is Sean Drippin' Buck Brown from Bethlehem, Pennsylvania.
Cool.
Tough from Christchurch, New Zealand, all the way down in New Zealand.
Love that.
Another Pennsylvania, Hershey, Pennsylvania, Rich Suggs. A couple people from Idaho. Want to mention James Rawson from Boise, Idaho.
Cool. Nice picture as well at Raymond James Stadium, I believe. Very cool.
And then 727 Canes from Puerto Plata, the Dominican Republic, on a cruise. Yeah. And then the last one, Randy Douglas, watching from Alberta, Canada, in McGregor Lake.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, we say it all the time, but it deserves repeating just how awesome our fans are. I think it's the coolest thing that we have fans all over the world. Obviously, we love the people in Tampa. However,
all over the world,
seeing fans from all different places, I think is just as cool. So we appreciate all of you, the Pewter people that are watching this show. And we appreciate Super Chats as well. So thank you very much, everybody. Let's start with MMDVG. Thanks for the $2 Super Chat. Who says, do you guys think Sean Tucker is being kept? Whew.
That's a question.
This is a good question, because we gotta look back at the timeline a little bit for Sean Tucker, because when he came in, he was an undrafted free agent. He didn't really get to have the offseason training because he had that heart condition, which unfortunately probably force him to not get drafted and have to sign with the team. There's a good chance he ends up getting drafted if he, if he didn't have that condition. But that's how life goes. So he has a late start because of all of that. He comes to the team. He was given a lot of opportunities to crack the roster. I mean, his competition was Keyshawn Vaughn with the understanding of Rachaad White's the guy. Chase Edmonds is going to have a role. Who's going to make this roster? The problem with Sean Tucker was a couple of things. Couldn't pass block very well, and that's always been big with the Bucs about running backs being able to pass block. He's also very hesitant when hitting the holes and things of that nature. It looked okay in the preseason, but when he got some opportunities in the NFL, he pretty much went nowhere. Then we spoke to the coaches and Jason Light, the general manager, at the Combine in Indianapolis, some other times, and they obviously don't hate Sean Tucker. I would never say that. But you could just tell the way that they spoke so glowingly of a Marquise Watts. You could tell that they just aren't in love with what they got from Sean Tucker. Yeah. Now, fast forward it, Adam. Now they have Bucky Irving. Chase Edmonds is back, and Rachaad White has another year under his belt. And I think a lot of us, if we were going to predict something, it could be a breakout year for Rachaad White, just from what he did last year. So now he's even further down on the depth chart, Adam. And he's not just – I think he's in jeopardy of even just getting on the practice squad, let alone making the 53-man roster.
Yeah, you said it well. And kind of going off this comment, I had Sean Tucker as a loser from minicamp. Simply put, right now he's running back number 4. You have Rachaad White, Bucky Irving, and Chase Edmonds. And from Sean Tucker, you really wanted to see him play faster, be explosive, dynamic. Yes. This is a guy who ran like a sub 4.4 40. And like seeing him on a couple of reps, like during minicamp, kind of looked a little bit slow. And it's like,
you got tracked down, tracked down at the line of scrimmage on a run to the outside where, like, dude, everything's in your advantage. Like, even if the guy tries to wrap you up, just kind of run through it. Like, there's no pads or anything. They're not going to tackle you. And he just kind of like stopped as soon as he got hit. I didn't love seeing that.
Yeah, and from a big physical back especially. And it's you kind of wonder, is he a fit in Liam Cohen's offense too? And learning, he took some time last year to learn the playbook, and now it's a new playbook. It might even put him a little bit further behind. And with guys like you mentioned on last week's show, DJ Williams and Ramon Jefferson, 2 running backs that very much could unseat Sean Tucker. So it's kind of looking like he's going to, at the very least, be on the practice squad, but that's going to be a fight to even make it on there.
Yeah, thank you for bringing up DJ Williams, who wears number 30, and Ramon Jefferson, who plays 45, because Williams had a nice screen pass that he caught and took it up the field. I saw more speed and explosiveness from DJ Williams on that one screen pass on a throw from John Wolford than I saw at any point last year in practice or in the preseason with Sean Tucker, except for that one run he had against the Jets. The same amount of speed and explosiveness. And then Ramon Jefferson, we've mentioned before, he played at Kentucky. Nobody's going to know how to use Ramon Jefferson better than Liam Cohen. So that's why I said I think it's a risk for him to even be on the practice squad. And again, I'm not rooting against Sean Tucker. I want him to play well. I want him to have an impact on the team. We just have to call it like we see it. And Jefferson still needs to prove something, but his build is just so different than everybody else. Williams, I thought, had a little burst to him that the team will like. And ultimately, this is a competition that it's not always going to be top billing at the Bucs facility, but it's something to keep an eye on if you really want to know the game within the game, because it's still going to be Rachaad White and Bucky and Chase. But with that said, this is another alternate storyline for the hardcore fans that may want to see it. So I'm glad you brought up those.
I was going to make one more point. You almost kind of wonder with Sean Tucker if his best opportunity was last year as a rookie when he started the season as the number 2 back and then kind of lost touches to Keyshawn Vaughn and Chase Edmonds. Like, if he would have really taken hold of that number 2 spot right away, this would be a completely different conversation. And maybe the Bucs don't draft Bucky Irving. Now you're looking at it, and he's on the outside looking in. So,
no, absolutely, Adam, because remember when Chase Edmonds got hurt earlier in the season, and they didn't go to Sean Tucker. They went to Keyshawn Vaughn.
And then they cut Keyshawn Vaughn.
And then they cut Keyshawn Vaughn, and they still didn't go to Sean Tucker. So that really speaks to just the lack of trust and faith that the Bucs had in Sean Tucker. And I get it. He's an undrafted free agent rookie. You don't always want to throw that guy to the fire. But that's part of the reason why Rachaad White had such a great dual threat season. Obviously, he didn't reach 1,000 yards rushing, and the Bucs have had a bad running game. But that's part of what made him so effective as a receiver, is because he was always on the field, because the Bucs didn't really trust anyone else, especially when Chase Edmonds was injured. So, yeah, I mean, if Sean Tucker beats out Keyshawn Vaughn, he gets those snaps that Keyshawn Vaughn had in the regular season when Chase Edmonds was hurt. And then, the Bucs probably go, all right, we got Sean Tucker as our RB2. Maybe they still end up drafting a running back, but maybe they draft a running back in the 6th or 7th round and not the 4th round like Bucky Irving, who's really going to have an opportunity to not just crack the lineup, but get some playing time, and we'll see what he does with kick return as well. Let's get to this next super chat. Thank you again to Brandon Riley. Appreciate it for this $5 super chat. Talking a little defense now. Do you really buy the hype on Zion McCollum? Has he really looked that good so far? He has the speed and length, but ... Adam, what do you think?
I kind of do buy the hype on Zion. When you look at last year, I felt like he was the best cornerback for the Bucs. The best availability, didn't really miss time due to injury like Jamel Dean and Carlton Davis. Really stepped up in terms of tackling and coverage. And heading into year 3, really kind of see him unlocking that production that's kind of eluded him. I definitely think he's more than capable of getting a couple of interceptions and really stepping up on the outside. He has the speed, the size, the length, and I feel at this point he's kind of gotten down the football IQ and learning how to play in Todd Bowles' defense. So when you look at all those factors, it just makes a lot of sense for Zion McCollum to really break out this year, and I think it's more than likely it'll happen.
Yeah, I'm buying a lot of stock on Zion McCollum. Now, has he looked amazing in OTAs or minicamp? No, I would not say so. But he hasn't looked bad. He hasn't gotten beaten or anything like that. Because we'll talk about another corner that has gotten beaten a little bit momentarily right after this. But with that said, Zion came on the show and said, "Yeah, I'm leading the team in interceptions." At the time when he had all those or when we had him at that point in practice. And he was getting them off of Baker Mayfield, so that's obviously important. I'm buying the stock for a couple of reasons with Zion. Yeah, I think at this point, first of all, him just staying on one side is going to help him leaps and bounds. And the fact that if he does win the starting job, which I predict that he will, he can just worry about his responsibility and not have to think about 10 other things. Am I playing this week? Which side am I playing on? Which receiver should I study, because I don't know what side I'm going to be on against my opponent? I think Zion, while stepping into a bigger role, is also going to have so much more of a peace of mind and clarity, just knowing this is my role, this is what I'm asked to do, here's how I'm going to go about doing it. I also think what's going to help Zion that maybe hurt Carlton Davis last year, or a reason why people have kind of soured on Jamel Dean to a degree, the back end's going to be even better, because you got not just Antoine Winfield Jr., but also Jordan Whitehead, and that's the best safety duo the Bucs have had since Antoine Winfield Jr. and Jordan Whitehead. The part 1 of them. So
part 2 might be even better.
Part 2, yeah. Typically sequels don't always work out, but in football could be a different story. So I think just also having a better defense around him with better play on the back end, mostly coming from Whitehead, and Winfield will still be fantastic. I'm assuming they're going to have a better pass rush than they had last year, at least with the front 4. So with all of that, I really it's just Zion, and this is kind of speaking for every single player in the secondary, take the ball away. That's really the number one thing I think he has to work on. But this goes into kind of what we talked about with Zion. I know Scott Reynolds has had conversations with Zion about this in terms of taking this training camp that's coming up in at the end of July, taking this preseason and doing some risky things that at the time you're like, Zion, what were you doing? But take the risk now, find out how you can kind of cheat the game a little bit, like with anticipation and reading and things like that. And that'll get him ready to go for the season with getting some more interceptions. So yeah, I'm big on Zion McCollum this year.
Yeah, if we were buying stocks and players, he'd probably be one of the top ones for me. So I agree with what you said there.
On the other scale of corners, this guy, we had him down as, I hate saying like loser as if like you're an absolute bum. we should probably change it to like, this guy had a loss in the mini camp.
Yeah.
And that would be newcomer Bryce Hall. I don't think it was necessarily the best look for Bryce Hall during OTAs and more specifically minicamp last week. And let's remember, he is coming to a new defense. It's an entirely different defense than, what he played with on the Jets. And I know they play different sides, but he was pretty much starting the whole time because Jamel Dean did not participate in minicamp at all. But Bryce Hall, Adam, he got cooked a couple of times and got cooked by rookies and second-year players, and that's not always the best thing you want to see from a veteran corner joining a new team.
It is not. And with Bryce Hall, like, signing with the team, there's a lot of excitement, him kind of being a low-risk, high-reward, like, kind of contract. And with the Jets, he really showed that he was a starting caliber corner. I think injuries hampered him last year, if I'm correct, Matt. I think he missed like half the season or something like that. But with Bryce Hall coming down
2 years ago.
Yeah, 2 years ago. But with Bryce Hall coming down here, learning a lot of different coverages, it is going to take some time for him to get acclimated. But at the same time, you're losing to like 6th, 7th, 8th wide receivers on the team. So seeing him get burned a couple times wasn't a good sign. And again, kind of points to Zion McCollum being that other starting corner. But when you look at it, there isn't really anyone else competing too much for Bryce Hall to be that third corner at this moment.
Right. So, and that kind of goes back to what we were talking about with Randy Gregory and Bryce Hall. Like the Bucs need Bryce Hall a little bit more than Randy Gregory. And we should point out once again, this does not always tell the sign of what's going to happen in training camp. Bryce Hall could ball out in training camp for all we know. He may have a better training camp than Zion McCollum. We just can't predict that at the moment. But based off what we saw from minicamp, if we were going to give the nod to somebody, it would be Zion McCollum over Bryce Hall. I feel like Bryce Hall kind of felt the wrath of I'm trying to piece together the puzzle here. He felt the wrath of Rakim Jarrett having kind of a kick in the behind from Sterling Shepard getting signed, if that makes sense. Because
that makes a lot of sense.
Sterling Shepard is probably, if you were to say who is the biggest threat to their roster spot from Sterling Shepard getting signed, I think there's an argument for Rakim Jarrett. And I don't think it's a coincidence that Rakim Jarrett balled out on the second day of minicamp and then also had a great minicamp on the third day of practice. I don't think it's any coincidence that he balled out right as the Sterling Shepard signing went down. So to bring that back to Bryce Hall, Rakim Jarrett goes, oh, damn, I got to pick my you-know-what up. And it was just a bad day for Bryce Hall to be lined up against a very motivated Rakim Jarrett. Again, 6 weeks from now, you've been working out. You understand the defense a lot more. You're going in at different times because Jamel Dean presumably will be back and Zion's on the other side. There's a long way ahead to say that, this signing didn't work out for the Buccaneers. However, Bryce Hall was very, very noticeable as a guy that maybe didn't necessarily have his best footing with the new team.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. And you mentioned Rakim Jarrett. Just want to point him out. He was the second person I had listed in the winners category.
He is a winner as well.
And just kind of right now, it looks like he's going to be wide receiver number 5. And especially after signing Sterling Shepard, he really kicked it up another gear. And behind McMillan, I thought he was the second best wide receiver at minicamp. Just his ability to create separation, more of a physical wide receiver. You kind of saw that with some of the contested grabs that he had. Really like his potential, like coming into college. I believe he was a 5-star recruit.
Yeah.
And kind of like slipped through the NFL draft. And the Bucs, they might have another undrafted find in Rakim Jarrett. It's a shame last year when he got hurt in the 49ers game after making that 41-yard catch, because he could have kind of got more of a role in the offense. Yeah. But now he looks rejuvenated and could still be a factor even after drafting McMillan.
He very much is a guy that makes me excited for the rotation of these wide receivers, because yes, we know Mike and Chris, but like, is it just going to be straight up Jaylen McMillan? Will Rakim Jarrett kind of get in there? Who does Rakim Jarrett sub in for? How does Sterling Shepard play into the mix if he makes the roster? And I'll admit, Rakim Jarrett was a guy I wasn't crazy high on going into OTAs. I just felt he got injured last season. I understand, like, some injuries you can't control, but he had no production like up to that point. He finally makes a big play, and then the injuries happen. But, it's a good reminder that some players, it requires patience to really see that production. And then you see what he did against, veteran players, starting caliber players, and working with Baker Mayfield as well. I think that's always important when, it's your starting quarterback going and making the play. Rakim Jarrett was very exciting. Yeah, I think because Mike and Chris didn't really do a ton in practice, so it was a lot of the other guys getting a look. And after Jaylen McMillan, offensively, I don't think there's any question Rakim Jarrett really was that dude. So definitely not a guarantee to make the roster, but it was a good time watching Rakim Jarrett go to work, do his thing. I know it could also be a good time to do your thing over on the Tampa Bay Bucs cruise, which is coming up in March.
We're on the Bucs cruise. Of course we're playing pool volleyball.
Hey, we on the Bucs cruise, of course. Anytime I say Tampa, they will say Bay. Tampa! Hey! Tampa! Hey! Tampa! Hey!
We're on the Bucs cruise. Of course, I've got my Super Bowl 37 hardware. What do you think?
We're on the Bucs cruise, and of course we had a pirate night. Arr! Arr!
That is right. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers cruise is coming up in March of 2025, the 7th through the 10th. So join the fun with hundreds of Bucs fans on the 3rd annual Tampa Bay Bucs cruise on the beautiful Celebrity Silhouette ship. It's a 3-night cruise that begins in Fort Lauderdale and visits Key West and Bimini in the Bahamas. Last year's cruise had Yaya Diaby, Christian Izzian, Rashad White, Greg Gaines, Luke Gedeke, Kate Otten, Jamel Dean, Super Bowl 37 MVP Dexter Jackson, Hall of Famer Warren Sapp, Gene Deckerhoff, and others. Even more players are expected next year, as well as a special guest appearance by Derek Brooks. There will be photo and autograph opportunities with players, a Raise the Flags sail away party, VIP parties with the players, special interviews, a water volleyball challenge, Bucs trivia contest, fun games, and more. We're also going to be doing a live Pewter Report podcast, and the Pewter Report group will be there. So, yes, you want to hang out with the players, totally get that. You could also hang out with us, too, if you want to.
Yeah, we're all right.
We're all right. I mean, we're no Yaya Diaby, but, we're all right. Reserve your cabin now on the 2025 Tampa Bay Bucs cruise, where drinks, including alcohol, Wi-Fi, and tips are all included. That's with a $200 deposit per person. And it's refundable until August 16th. So visit TampaBayBucsCruise.com. That's TampaBayBucsCruise.com. You can also give them a call at 1-800-975-7112. That's 1-800-975-7112. I got to make sure my beach bod is good to go for that cruise coming up in March. And that's why, as we wind down the show, the next couple people I'm going to mention them in a group because it's part of the body transformation group that we were talking about before. I know we mentioned Vita Vea, but Yaya Diaby, as you see there, is another one who looks monstrous this year. Absolutely monstrous with the more mass that he's put on. And he confirmed he is not built in a lab. So, Yaya, I think, deserves a big win for sure. This one, that's the shot right there. So, obviously, Vita slimmed down. Yaya put on some weight. Cody Mauch, I would put as a winner as well because he put on some weight and just looks gigantic as well. And Logan Hall, too. Obviously, a guy that hasn't truly produced the way everybody wants him to. I think it's a very important season for Logan Hall.
Yeah.
But, he looked pretty big this mini camp as well. And hopefully it's a sign of things to come for training camp in the regular season.
Yeah. And you put some pictures up of Yaya Diaby, Logan Hall. Just kind of want to talk about Yaya Diaby. If it was like Monsters, Inc., right, and all the opposing quarterbacks were sitting in bed and Yaya Diaby came through, like, that screaming meter would be, like, up to the max. Like, if you see this guy coming alongside the edge, you'd be terrified. Like, this guy, he got even bigger. He already was a monster, and now he's even a bigger monster heading into his second season. I think he's really hungry to prove that he is the best pass rusher on the Bucs team. And after getting slighted by PFF for not even being a top 32 outside linebacker, definitely think that he's someone to keep an eye on and that he can really have a double-digit sack season. And then also with Logan Hall coming into the NFL, a little bit undersized, like weight-wise.
Yeah.
Kind of took that first season as like more of a redshirt year and maybe wasn't ready for that starting role just yet. Definitely will be a crucial year for him heading into year 3 because if he doesn't break out, then you kind of wonder if the Bucs would look at drafting another defensive lineman or signing somebody.
Mm-hmm.
But at this point, it's all about who's looking good so far. And it's Vita Vea, Yaya Diaby, Logan Hall, and then also Cody Mauch really looks more like an NFL guard.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. There's no question about that. Let's get to this huge, speaking of big, shout out to Black Gold 1999 for this $49.99 super chat. Big time super chat. Thank you so much.
Thank you so
Black
much.
Gold 1999, who says, I was watching the top 20 quarterback ranking last week. Baker at 20, but Wilson, Tua, Cousins, Love, Trevor. What's up with that? Yeah, so we've talked about this before, but again, you super chat us. We will talk about anything. Baker at 20 felt wrong.
It did.
I think Baker is a top 15 quarterback. I do think he is right around 15 in of itself. But yeah, I don't think it was fair to put Baker kind of at the latter half with some of the guys where it's like, really, Baker just did this. Though I do wonder with these quarterback rankings, how much is it, hey, we're just looking at last season versus a body of work over, let's just say, 3 years? Because Baker's body of work over 3 years, not ideal. But if you're looking at just last season, then I think there's no question he's a top 15.
Yeah, I agree. And I remember we kind of did a show on it and talking about some of the quarterbacks that he might be better than. And it really could be argued that he is a top 15 quarterback, kind of sitting right at 15, because you look at last year and he really played like a top 12 quarterback. I mean, he had a career season, and heading into 2024, I think he has an even better collection of weapons around him. When you still have Mike and Chris, you have guys like Jaylen McMillan now entering the mix with Bucky Irving.
Yes.
Cade Otton looks improved. Again, another winner from mini camp. So you look at all the things around him and Baker having stability. I think he could even be slightly better than he was last year going into this year. But grouping him in with guys like Derek Carr, Russell Wilson, Deshaun Watson, he didn't belong with those. Like, which one doesn't belong? It's Baker Mayfield. Move him up a little bit. But yeah, I don't know what's up with that. Baker should get a little bit more love. for a season last year.
Yeah, you make a very good point, because like Derek Carr had a terrible season. He had a terrible season the year before. The Raiders benched Derek Carr. I think people kind of people forgot that Derek Carr got benched. Yeah, he kind of needed a new scenery and everything like that, but it didn't get that much better. Russell Wilson, I think, again, if we were going to look at the 3-year window, Baker's one season last year, I think, still has been better than the last 3 years of Russell Wilson, even going back to his last year in Seattle. So if Baker has a similar season to what he just had, but let's just say the Bucs win 10 or 11 games instead of what they did last year, going 9-8, I think Baker, his baseline will be 15, and then we can argue, will he be in the top 10? But yeah, I think we're in full agreement with you, Black Gold 1999. Thanks again for the super chat.
Thank you again.
It was a little head scratching seeing Baker at 20, given the season that he just had. It's like some guys succeed, and it's like, well, they've normally done this, and they kind of get penalized for what they were versus what they currently are. And then there's other guys like Trevor Lawrence, who got a huge contract a couple of days ago, did not have a good season. And sure, injury was a big part of it. But they look at Trevor Lawrence and they go, and I get it, you can't just read the box score and say, oh, well, he did this, this, and this. But, Trevor Lawrence did not have a good season. And everyone's like, well, he was great 2 years ago. So he's got to be, he's got to be top 10. And I understand the ceiling and the potential for Trevor Lawrence is way higher than Baker Mayfield. But we can't just slam Baker for what he was while also rewarding Trevor Lawrence for like what he can be. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a very fair point. And paying Trevor Lawrence like so much money, like they're really banking on him in future seasons. But when you look at it last year, Baker was the better quarterback. Like in my mind, he was more consistent. And now Trevor Lawrence had injuries, but he also had some games where he just he wasn't there. And like being that star player, I felt that he wasn't really performing as well as Baker was. And so with that argument in mind, definitely still think Trevor Lawrence is very much on his way to being an elite quarterback. Yeah. But Baker deserves, again, being up a couple of spots when you kind of compare some of the guys that are higher up on the list.
Right.
So,
well, the good thing for Baker and Trevor Lawrence is that they both got huge contracts this offseason and, probably doing some house shopping and things like that. Baker, obviously, in the Tampa area, while Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville. And, of course, they will – obviously, quarterbacks don't play against each other. They will square off against each other in the preseason and organized or joint training camp, I should say. So maybe they could talk about their home buying experience and both can say, hey, let's use Eric Gross and the Eric Gross Group, the official realty group of PewterReport.com. It takes a full team effort to win a football game, and it takes a full team effort to win in real estate. The Eric Gross Group has done hundreds of transactions in this crazy real estate market and has experience in all types of situations. With a strong team of vendors and network of over 85,000 agents, the Eric Gross Group will turn your dream of buying or selling a home into a reality. Their clients are not just transactions, they are lifelong friendships. So don't let the stress of buying or selling a home keep you out of the game. Let the Eric Gross Group take the pressure off. Find them on Facebook and Instagram at Eric Gross Group. Check out their website, housesinfla.com. Give them a call at 513-907-4271. That's 513-907-4271. No matter where you are in your home ownership journey, you'll feel welcome with the Eric Gross Group, the official realtor of PewterReport.com. All right, Adam. A couple names we'll just rattle through quick. We mentioned McMillan, Jarrett. I would put Baker on there as well as a winner just for, we've heard a lot of players talk about how difficult this offense can be, and it requires a high IQ. And, he was getting praise from Rachaad White and Bucky Irving for really taking leadership and helping people out during this offense. So, figuring
nobody knows it better.
And nobody knows it better than Baker Mayfield. So I think Baker deserved to be a winner. Chris Braswell, I think overall showed some nice speed on the outside, and he's more known as like a physical guy. So I thought that was big. And Funderburk, the corner for the interception he had, should be on that list. But yeah, that's pretty much all I got for the winners. You mentioned Cade Otton as well.
Yeah, Cade Otton had one really big day. The first day of minicamp kind of was an offensive MVP, had a really nice one-handed catch, and looked to be more consistent and showing that he could be more than just a chain mover in the offense. So I thought he was a winner. You mentioned Braswell. Again, just really any outside linebacker, not named Randy Gregory, deserves a mention there. And then looking at some other, I guess, losers, not
guys that had losses. Yes.
Yeah, guys that had losses. Robert Hainsey, just kind of losing that starting center grip to Grant Barton. Grant Barton, when he spoke this past week, like everybody had a 5-minute press conference. He spoke for 11 minutes and again just showed that, hey, Duke has a pretty good academic program. He's a pretty smart guy. So I definitely think he's almost a winner too when you look at it. So, and then one other guy, Devin Culp, you kind of wanted to see more from the 7th round pick. Had a noticeable drop, didn't really do too much. So that'd kind of be guys that had some losses.
Yeah, I would throw Cope Keefe in there as well. He was injured, and like that's unfortunate. There's nothing he can do. It's just tough for Cope Keefe because it's out of his hands, but they're transitioning to a new offense that has less 2 tight end sets. He's not a receiving tight end. And so it's tough to make a good name in front of the coaches when he's injured. Again, there's nothing he can do about that. It's not his fault per se. But just with Cade Otton balling out and Payne Durham, I think maybe not necessarily a winner, but certainly taking steps forward. Yeah, it's tougher for Cope Keefe to make this team. So I think in that aspect, it was a loss as well. But way more winners than losers, or wins and losses during minicamp, as it should be, which is a good sign. And I feel pretty optimistic about the Bucs heading into training camp. I think this is a good football team, Adam. This is a good football team if they can really just stay consistent. And a lot of that's the quarterback play. But there's a fair amount to be excited for when training camp arrives. So,
yeah, I have to agree. Like the floor of the team is a good football team, and they have the potential to be a very good or even like a great football team if they're with so much young talent. If a lot of those guys really hit like the potential that they have, I think there is a lot of potential. In the past couple of seasons, the Bucs have drafted really well. So when you look at it, the ceiling could be 11, 12 win team. And so when you look heading into training camp, there is a lot of optimism, obviously, around the league with every team. Nobody's going to be like, oh, man, we're a bad football team right now. But the Bucs especially, I think there is a lot of encouraging signs.
For sure. And it still feels like a team that's trending in the right direction because last year was supposed to be kind of like a regroup, rebuild year with Tom Brady retiring and Baker Mayfield comes in. But, you know, they kind of solved the problem at quarterback. And now Baker's here for the future. So, you know, like last year, the Lions were the big up-and-coming team. I think this year the Texans are kind of taking that role. I think the Bucs are still going to surprise a lot of people. And next season could be where everyone's like, the Bucs are legit. This is like their time. So, yeah, it's a lot of exciting stuff. Can't wait to talk about all of it every single Monday through Thursday on the Pewter Report podcast. We've got some other great shows coming up. We're going to talk about where the Bucs are stacked on offense and defense for a couple of shows. We'll talk about who has the best depth at each position in the whole NFC South. We'll rank the Bucs quarterbacks, really Baker Mayfield, against the rest of the NFC South, who's 1-2. We'll do it with every single position. So a lot of great shows coming up this week, all at 4 p.m. So if you're not already doing so, please like and subscribe to all of our social media on X, Facebook, and Instagram. And, of course, our YouTube channel is Pewter Report TV. Please subscribe, leave a comment on this video, leave a like. Comments always help a lot and help get those subscriber numbers up. All right, that's going to do it for us today. We appreciate all the Pewter people. Another great roll call today. You guys are the best. Thank you for the super chats. Thanks for just the constant comments and talking points and discussions and everything. It's always fantastic. And we're going to do it all again tomorrow. So until then, for Adam Slavon, I'm Matt Matera saying thanks everybody for watching. We'll see you tomorrow at 4 p.m. for another edition of the Pewter Report podcast. Peace out.
Out.